So Derek Chauvin, the former police officer, I should say, that was kneeling on George Floyd's neck, cutting off his ear, leading to his death, to his murder, has been charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. And to this just goes to show, I think, the power of creating social unrest, of getting in the streets, fucking shit up, causing chaos, destroying property, especially of these, big corporations like Target, to put pressure on in this case, the criminal justice system to act when we have, this videotape of Derek Chauvin, this former Minneapolis police officer, kneeling on George Floyd's neck. George Floyd is saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe," killing him. And, it took 3 days of unrest in the streets of Minneapolis and other places for the criminal and justice system to act. And again, he was charged by Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman. But why is he being charged? Why is Derek Chauvin, this police officer who murdered George Floyd, why is he being charged with third-degree murder and not first-degree? I mean, I would like some explanation about that. Let's see, and then, so it'd be interesting because there was 3 other officers at the scene when this happened: Thomas Lane, Tao Tao, and J. Alexander Koenig. They were all fired, but I mean, they were at least accomplices to this. They were standing by watching George Floyd have his life taken away, being murdered by, this police officer, Derek Chauvin. There needs to be some charges and some consequences for these officers too, because literally they were allowing him to be murdered in broad daylight. They were just standing around watching while it happened. From my perspective, they're as guilty as Derek Chauvin, because they're supposed to uphold the law and protect it, and in broad daylight with the public watching, they just allowed Derek Chauvin to murder George Floyd. And again, it was supposedly for using a counterfeit check or counterfeit money for $20 or something. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. This is who gets murdered in broad daylight while we have, crooks on Wall Street fleecing the United States out of billions, sometimes trillions of dollars, and they get away scot-free, and George Floyd potentially, used some type of counterfeit money or, wrote a bad check or something, and he gets murdered in broad daylight by, this police officer. It's, again, the United States is a very racist and white supremacist state. It was founded on the genocide of the Native American people, the enslavement of African Americans. Those currents are still very much alive and well within our country, unfortunately. And I mean, this is just an example that, again, it took 3 days of protesting, of rioting, of looting for the Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman to charge Derek Chauvin with murder. And again, it's only third-degree murder, and we'll see what happens with the trial. But again, to me, it really shows the important role that civil unrest, civil disobedience, property destruction, looting, rioting can play to force the hands of the power that be to get some type of justice when, especially people of color are just murdered indiscriminately by the police in the United States. And then Ben Crump, he's a civil rights attorney, he's representing the Floyd family, called Chauvin's arrest a welcome but overdue step on the road to justice. Quote, We expected a first-degree murder charge. We want a first-degree murder charge, Crump said in a statement, and we want to see the other officers arrested. We call on the authorities to revise the charges to reflect the true culpability of the officer. The pain that the black community feels over this murder and what it reflects about the treatment of black people in America is raw and spilling out onto the streets across America. Organizers in Minneapolis said after the arrest that they were not, quote, not satisfied with one officer being detained. Indeed, I mean, you have to hold the people accountable, who those other 3 officers who were there watching George Floyd get murdered in broad daylight by Derek Chauvin. I mean, there needs to be some responsibility, again, like that lawyer was pointed out, some culpability for those other officers. They are supposed to hold and uphold and protect the law, right? Protect and serve. What were they doing? They were just standing around watching George Floyd get murdered, and they didn't think to step in. What is it, like the code of the blue shield, the code of blue silence, or whatever they call it? I mean, it's disgusting. So we'll see what happens if those other officers get charged, if the charges against Chauvin are brought up to the adequate level, which I think, and these a lot of other people think, should obviously be first degree murder. I mean, so third degree murder is, quote, the unlawful killing of a human being when perpetrated without any design to effect death by a person engaged in the perpetration or attempt to perpetrate any other felony. I mean, yeah, why would you charge this officer, Derek Chauvin, with third-degree murder of George Floyd when George Floyd was there saying, I can't breathe. What the fuck did this officer think was going to happen if he kept cutting off his airway? He was obviously going to die. To me, that's premeditated. To me, that warrants a first-degree murder charge. And I feel like those other officers should be charged as some type of, accomplices, or they need to be held accountable, obviously, for letting it happen, for letting it transpire. They were just standing around watching it happen, watching him, again, get murdered, George Floyd get murdered by this officer, and they did nothing. That is inexcusable. It's disgusting. It's unethical. It's immoral. It's illegal, or at least it should be. We'll see if, again, any legal ramifications, happen. And I guess George Floyd and Chauvin, the former Minneapolis cop who murdered him, I guess they worked for a number of years at the same restaurant or club as, I think, bouncers. So they had some personal history there. So it's like, what is going on? I mean, to cause this officer to just murder in broad daylight somebody he supposedly knew for almost going on 2 decades over a supposed $20 counterfeit bill or check or whatever it was. Obviously, no amount of theft or anything like that is worth somebody's life being just snuffed out like that by the police, by law enforcement. Hugely disgusting, hugely disturbing. And again, the main takeaway I'm getting from this is that there is power in creating social unrest, in property destruction, in looting, in rioting, and obviously not necessarily physical violence against other people, but violence against property destruction, especially if it's against, huge, massive corporations. We saw the looting that took place, at the Minneapolis, or one of the, targets somewhere in Minnesota. And, I'm in full well support of that, frankly, especially when it forces the criminal and justice system to finally, indict this killer cop with this third-degree murder charge. Again, I think it should be first degree, and I think obviously those other officers need to be held accountable too, or, I mean, what message does that send if, you know, other cops see these cops get away with just being, you know, bystanders while George Floyd was getting murdered, and they didn't stop it, they didn't do anything? That sets a bad precedent. They need to be held accountable as well. But kudos to all the people in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, around the United States who are getting out on the streets, speaking truth to power, and, you know, forcing the levers of justice to speed up to actually hold this murderous cop accountable. So kudos to all the people out there protesting, looting, and rioting, frankly, because as Martin Luther King said, what was it? I think he said, you know, rioting is basically the language, the voice of the unheard. And, you know, especially for communities of color, they've been under, you know, the boot of law enforcement, of police in the United States, you know, since basically the modern day police in the United States was found around, you know, slave patrols, you know, basically in the South. So, and, you know, this was just the tipping point, and it all kind of blew up from, you know, George Floyd getting murdered. But it was just, you know, kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, because again, people of color, marginalized communities have been dealing with, you know, the lethal force of law enforcement and cops being able to basically indiscriminately kill these people and wreak havoc on their communities for, again, since, you know, modern day policing was created in the United States, and it finally, again, just hit a tipping point. And it just shows me the power, again, in civil unrest, civil disobedience, to force these, what are largely unaccountable power structures, to actually make some, to charge, you know, this killer cop in this case, because otherwise, who knows how long it would have took, if it would have actually happened, if this civil unrest, this civil disobedience wasn't taking place. So again, everybody out there that's, you know, protesting, whether it's in Minneapolis, New York, Louisiana, wherever, stay safe, wear masks so they can't, you know, get your picture, get video evidence of you. Stay safe, be smart, and all power to the people. Peace, much love. If you like the damn video, like it. If not, dislike it. Subscribe for more content. Peace, much love.